part of what we need to talk about today is going to be management, and let's talk about that as we come on into the pit. So grab a guide if you would, and come on into the pit. We'll talk about different species and how to be able to utilize those. You can come up top or behind or whichever. If you come on this side, you'll be able to see the wall that has the golf tees in there. The first species we want to look at is Sudan grass, and I would really prefer you turn around and look at the Sudan grass over there to get a better idea of what Sudan grass could look like. How much N did we put on that? Didn't we put on about 40 units of N? Wasn't that the idea?
Nearly all the cover crops got zero fertilizer except for the north end of each cover crop plot.
Okay.
I broadcasted with a small spreader some triple 10 at 175 pounds to the acre rate, so we got about 18 units of NPK on the last 4 to 6 feet of each plot.
You can actually see
it shows a bump right there.
Yep, okay. And that's at only 18 pounds, and realistically, if we're producing Sudan grass for forage, we'd put on 75 units of N up front and hopefully take off somewhere around 5 to 6, maybe 7 ton dry matter forage production of near dairy quality forage production after wheat. So that's a real possibility to be able to do that and have an excellent cover crop right along with that. Where we have a lot of wheat, volunteer wheat pressure through these fields. So, you know, this is not impressive. And, you know, if I'm you and you're me, I wouldn't do this. I would do that. So this is a real good point, is that where we have volunteer wheat, we need to consider controlling that volunteer wheat if we're going to be coming in and no-tilling in after our wheat is taken off. Now, you can wait till you get a rain, get a little germination on that wheat, knock it back with some glyphosate, and go right after it. If you've got a bad weed problem in your wheat, then you might want to put in a little 2,4-D, wait 10 days or so you can get your cover crops up and going. But nevertheless, this shows a lot of suppression from the volunteer wheat. The Sudan grass, you'll see in a plot that Brian does in a little bit, we've got roots probably already 35, 40 inches deep on that, where we got a good stand. The Sudan grass, excellent feed, but also a very good cover crop. When it dies off here, when we get a freeze, and that freeze for that to kill it off is going to be somewhere around 28 degrees. That will keep a nice mat. We got a nice fibrous root system underneath it. It's pretty good about getting through compaction. It's not awesome like some of our other cover crops, but it gives a good opportunity, especially if we need feed. Buckwheat is another very wonderful cover crop. It's now a weed because it's produced seed, it's dropped to the ground, and you'll see buckwheat in these areas next year. So the key with buckwheat is when it's starting to flower, go ahead and clip it off, because after about 45, 50 days, we've gotten our value out of our buckwheat, and the biggest value we get is we're going to be able to have our phosphorus much more available for our next crop, maybe for the next crop after that and the next crop after that. For whatever reason, buckwheat chemically helps to break free a lot of the phosphorus in the soil. And I've got farmers back home that say, I can find exactly where I had my buckwheat plot 6 years ago. My corn's still darker green, it's more drought tolerant, yields better. So I ask them, why don't you plant buckwheat across the whole field? Well, this year they planted buckwheat across the whole field. But the idea is for a short term, we're talking about 45, 50 days, this will be a short term cover crop that can give you some nice benefit. Typically not a deep root. So if we're looking to build a lot of soil and dig deep through, right here we've got some roots somewhere around 20 inches deep, but typically it's not going to be as deep as we'll find on some of our other cover crops. But still, for a short term, short time blast to help benefit our soil, buckwheat can do a good job. Soybeans, too expensive, don't even try it. All right, sun
you got
hemp.
some leftovers that you got to get rid of.
Well, yeah, so they actually put a little yellow ribbon on this sun hemp because we really aren't seeing sun hemp coming up in here. Sun hemp is getting advertised a lot right now. I will say that if we're going to plant sun hemp, you've got to inoculate it. It takes a special inoculant. Do not plant sun hemp without the inoculant. Don't plant any of our legumes without an inoculant, because the key is with our legumes is we want to produce nitrogen. I can guarantee you there's not a lot of rhizobia for sun hemp in the soil, not here. Now, if we were in Hawaii or Florida, maybe, but not here. So make sure we're inoculating this seed, and Sun Hemp can have some wonderful traits. Again, a good nitrogen producer, pretty good root mass on Sun Hemp. I was talking to a gentleman a little bit ago that's doing some studies up toward Oshkosh, and got some real good stands, got some tall Sun Hemp that's working real well. Unfortunately, when we're planting into wheat, typically we're not getting as good a stand if we're no-tilling into the wheat. We usually get a better stand, and the fellow at Oshkosh was telling me he actually tilled his soil, then planted it, got an awesome stand, nice and tall, and working out real well for him. So it's maybe going to need a little less competition than what maybe some of our other crops might be able to work with. So Sun Hemp can be a real good option.
Dave,
yes.
How many days is that? Does it need to get the best benefit out of it?
It's a warm season legume,
Yeah.
so I'd like to see realistically a good 90 days.
July.
For our best opportunity. Yeah, July. But if I'm going to plant it in July, I'm going to be real careful what I plant it with, because I don't want bolting radishes, for instance, or I don't want something else that might create some issues later down the line. So if I'm going to plant this in July, I'm probably going to plant it with maybe crimson clover, maybe with maybe Austrian winter peas, maybe Sudan grass, but I'm not going to plant it with a radish at that point, because most likely my radish will bolt if I'm planting it that early.